Hello, welcome to another Team SNG deck profile. Today we're going to be talking about the Hex Codetalker deck. Now this is a deck that utilizes some of the baby code talkers like Microcoder and Code Radiator to get into your code talkers. It utilizes Cynet Codec, and it utilizes the ability to spam the field with Link monsters and with Cyberse monsters, seeing as many Cyberse monsters have the effect to special summon themselves from hand or deck or grave if X, Y, or Z happens. And so this gives us a way to sort of get into our talkers and into our other extra deck monsters that we run. Don't forget, if you enjoy this, leave us a like, leave us a comment, subscribe. You know, that way you get informed anytime we make content. And let's get into it. So, first of all, we're going to start off with the monsters. The first monster we run is probably one of the more important ones, and that is 3 copies of Microcoder. Microcoder is a great little card because of the fact that when he's in your hand, you can use him as link material for a Code Talker monster. That's really useful because you can put a monster on field and then you can still link up into a Link 2 using him from your hand, so long as you're going into a Code Talker. He has other benefits. One is if he's on field, when he's used as link material, you can add a level 4 or lower Cyberse monster from the deck to the hand. But he also has an effect that's useful from hand, which is when he's used as link material from the hand, you can add a Cynet Speller Trap from deck to hand. Next monster we run 2 copies of Code Radiator. Code Radiator is a really useful card. Again, like Microcoder, can be used from the hand as link material for a Code Talker monster. The benefit that this has is when it's used as material from the hand, you can target a monster your opponent controls and decrease that monster's attack to 0. If it's used on the field, though, you can target 2 monsters your opponent controls and decrease their attack to 0. So this can be really useful. We do run a 3rd copy in the side because, you know, if you're going second, it's more valuable than if you're going first. But it's still a useful card because of the fact you can use it from the hand to link away into a Code Talker monster. The rest of this is pretty generic-ish Cyberse lineup. First card that we run 3 copies of Backup Secretary, which lets us special summon herself whenever we control a Cyberse monster on the field. So it's just a generic Cyberse extender, which is really good for us. We also run 2 copies of Cyberse Converter. If all the monsters we control are Cyberse, we can special summon this card from our hand. Again, just a generically useful card and a generic extender for the Cyberse archetype. We then run 1 copy of Link Infraflyer. This card can be special summoned to a zone any Link monster points to. So, again, an extender. We run 3 copies of Widget Kid. Widget Kid, if he's normal or special summoned, allows you to special summon a Cyberse monster from your hand in defense position. So, again, if this is in your hand, you use this as your normal summon, you special summon something from the hand. That gives you material for Link 2. You can use it to special summon all sorts of different stuff. It allows us to extend continuously with the Cyberse archetype. So we then run 2 copies of Prohibit Snake. Now this is a good little battle protection card. If it's in your hand and your opponent attacks into one of your Cyberse Link monsters, you can pitch this from the hand to return the attacking monster to your opponent's hand. This is really useful in the sense that it's basically battle protection for your links. It also has a graveyard effect, which is if your Link monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can banish this to add back from grave a level 4 or lower Cyberse monster. So it allows us to get some recursion of maybe our combo pieces, which can be quite useful. We run some 1-ofs for the Cyberse archetype. We run 1 Link Streamer. This is a really useful card. What this card does is if a Cyberse monster is special summoned while this card is on the field, it will generate a token, and the tokens are really useful because you can use them for link materials as well. We run 1 Lady Debug. This is a generic card for Cyberse again. This card lets us search out a level 4 or lower Cyberse. So This could be a really useful card. Again, it's another one of. It can act as an extender if you search for something like Microcoder or Code Radiator. So it can be a really good card in that sense. We also run a Balancer Lord. If Balancer Lord is summoned, you can pay 1,000 life points, and you can normal summon another Cyberse monster this turn. Also, if it is banished, you can special summon another level 4 or lower monster from your grave. We also run one copy of Cyberse Gadget. Cyberse Gadget is a really useful card. When it's normal summoned, you can target a level 2 or lower Cyberse monster in your graveyard and special summon it in defense. Its effects will be negated though. Then when it leaves the field, it generates a token. So if you were to link this off for a link 2, it'll generate a token. That token can then be used to link the link 2 off to a link 3. So it's just a generic sort of extender for the Cyberse archetype. We also run one copy of Firewall Guardian. Firewall Guardian is really useful in the sense that he recurs himself, which can be great. What happens is, when he leaves the field as link material, you special summon him back from the grave. The next time he leaves the field, he's banished. But if he stays in the grave, you can actually use his second effect, which is whenever your opponent battles with a link monster, you can banish him to negate the attack. That will also allow you to lower the attacking monster's attack to 0 for the rest of the turn. We also run one copy of Defcon Bird in the main deck. You send this from your hand basically to double your monster's attack. It can't be used for link monsters, unfortunately. But it also has another effect which allows it to act as an extender, which is if you send a Cyberse monster from your hand to the grave, then you can actually special summon this card from your hand. The final low-level one-of that we run is one copy of Clock Wyvern. Clock Wyvern's a really useful card. It's the fusion material for something in our extra deck, but it's also really useful in the sense that when it is normal summoned or special summoned, you can have its attack and special summon a clock token to your side of the field. This is really useful in a combo that I'll show you guys when we get to the combo tutorial at the end of the video. So that does it for our low-level one-ofs. We run a couple higher-level one-ofs, which we'll talk about in just a sec. We also run the one-of Cyberse Synchron. Cyberse Synchron is really useful. It helps us get into something in our extra deck. What it does is when it's on the field, once per turn, you can target a level 4 or lower Cyberse monster and double that monster's level. When this card's in the grave, it can also protect your monsters in the extra monster zone. You can actually banish this card from the grave to protect that monster from battle or from card effect. So that's why we run one of him. The first high-level one-of we run is Degrade Buster. Degrade Buster is really useful because A, it's a big body, which can sometimes help you get over some stuff. B, it's a free extender. You can special summon him by banishing off 2 Cyberse monsters from the graveyard. You can then target one monster your opponent controls with a higher attack than this, and you can banish it until the end phase. So this will let you sort of remove things that your opponent might have that could be problem monsters. The next higher level one-of that we run is Cyberse White Hat. Now Cyberse White Hat's really useful. His primary effect is if you control 2 monsters of the same type, you can special summon him. His secondary effect is if he's sent to the graveyard as link material, then every monster your opponent controls loses 1,000 attack. So that can be really useful sort of late game, because if your opponent's sort of built up a big board that you have to try and get around, Cyberse White Hat will help you get around that. So that does it for our general Cyberse lineup. Now we run a couple other monsters in the deck. The first is we run 3 copies of Nightmare Corruptor Ibley. So those of you that have watched the Mech Knight Crusadia Mech Knight profile on the deck, you understand why I love this card. You normal summon it, you link it off, it special summons itself to its opponent's side of the field. When this card is on the field, though, whether it's yours or your opponent's, they can only special summon, or you can only special summon, link monsters until it leaves the field. The other card that we run is, again, from the Mech Knight Crusadia profile, 3 copies of Iron Dragon Time Maiden. Much like in the Mech Knight Crusadia deck, it's really easy for this deck to put 3 cards in a column, which then allows you to set up the Time Maiden lock, where you take away the extra deck monster zone from your opponent. So this card can be really useful. It can also be difficult for your opponent to outlet this deck. So that does it for the monster lineup. So, Now that we've talked about the monsters, let's get on to the spells. First spell I run 2 copies of one-time passcode. One-time passcode is just a token generator. Activate it, special summon a Cyberse token to your side of the field, link it off, dance with it, whatever you want to do. We then run a bunch of different Signet cards, which can all be searched out by Microcoder. The first one we run is Signet Backdoor. Signet Backdoor is really useful. It's a quick play spell that allows you to banish a monster from your side of the field and search out a Cyberse monster with lower attack than that monster. The other thing it does is it returns that banished monster on the next turn, and that monster can attack directly. So it can be really useful in the sense that it will allow you to dodge effects, gain resources, and then recur the cost of this card the next turn. We also run 1 copy of Signet Fusion. As I say, Clock Wyvern's here for a reason. He can be used as fusion material for something we run in our extra deck. So, Signet Fusion is the fusion spell to utilize him. We also run 2 copies of Signet Optimization. Signet Optimization is a great card because of the very simple fact what it does is it acts, when you activate it, it allows you to normal summon again. While it's active on the field, if a Codetalker monster is involved in battle, your opponent can't activate any card effects until the end of the damage step, meaning that your Codetalkers are basically protected from any sort of damage step effect. And as I say, it can also act as an extender, because when you first activate it, you can normal summon right after activating this card. Finally, we run 3 copies of the lifeblood of this deck, and that is Signet Codec. Signet Codec is such an overpowered card in this deck specifically. If you special summon a Codetalker monster from your extra deck, what this will let you do is it'll let you search out a Cyberse monster that shares the attribute with that Codetalker monster. So we run a lot of different Codetalkers in the extra deck, as you'll see when we get there, and a lot of them have different attributes, which allows us to search out the materials that we need to either continue extending and continue comboing off. This is a critical piece to this deck's functionality. That does it for the spells. Trap cards. What can I say? Most of the decks that I play run very few. This one, no exception. This deck only runs 1 trap, and it runs 3 copies of it. And that is Signet Conflict. Signet Conflict is really useful counter trap. What it does is if you control a Codetalker monster, you can activate this to negate a spell, or trap effect, or monster effect. What it also then does is it banishes that card from the field. It also makes it so your opponent can't activate that monster's effect, or that trap's effect, or that spell's effect until the end of the next turn. And that's it. That's the trap lineup. First card that we run is Talkback Lancer. Talkback Lancer is really useful for recurring your Codetalkers that might have gone to the grave. It's also a bit unfortunate, but it is also my target for Nightmare Corruptor Iblis. So if I've ended up with Nightmare Corruptor Iblis, what this technically does though is when it's on the field, you contribute a Cyberse monster, special summon a Codetalker from the grave to the zone that this card points to. The next card we run is our generic Codetalker. We run 2 copies of him. He gains 500 attack for every card he points to. He also cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects so long as he points to a monster. So he can be a generically useful card for us to go into. If Signet Codec's on the field, he'll let us search out Microcoder, which can be really valuable as well. We then run 1 copy of Power Codetalker. Power Codetalker is a Link 3. I don't go into it that often. It's here because A, with Signet Codec, it's a different attribute again, so it lets us search out Degrade Buster from the deck. The benefit of running this is if you do special summon this, you can target one of your opponent's monsters and negate their effects until the end of the turn. And that's a once per turn thing, so you can do it repeatedly. The other thing is, if your opponent was to battle with this, you can tribute a monster that it points to for this card to double its attack during the damage step, meaning that your opponent's going to end up running into a monster that's 4,600 rather than 23. And you can do this on your turn or your opponent's turn, so that can be really useful if you're pushing for game, but as I say, for the most part, I tend not to go into this. One of the cards that I go into quite a lot, Shooting Codetalker. Shooting Codetalker is a really useful card for dismantling your opponent's boards. It's 2300 attacker again. It has two effects. The first effect is at the start of the battle phase, you can activate its first effect, and it will gain an additional attack for each monster it points to, meaning that you could potentially have 3 attacks with this card. The other thing is, at the end of the battle phase, if this card has destroyed monsters your opponent controls, you get to draw cards equal to the number of monsters it destroyed. So, if it destroys 2 monsters, at the end of your battle phase, you draw 2 cards. And so that can be really useful for recurring some of the resources it might have taken to get to this, or it could just be just a generically useful thing because the advantage is quite useful. The next Codetalker we're going to talk about is Hex Codetalker. Hex Codetalker is probably one of my most favorite Codetalkers that we can go into with this deck. When it is link summoned, you can target main monster zones equal to the number of monsters in the extra monster zone. So what you then do is those main monster zones become mute points. They can no longer be used so long as this remains on the field. Also, monsters that this card points to gain 500 attack. He also grants protection to the cards he points to, as those cards can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. The final Codetalker we run is probably the most valuable Codetalker in the deck, and that is 2 copies of Trance Codetalker. Now, we run this card twice because, it's a good card for the first turn because it helps you set up a board, but it's a good card the second turn to help you recur a board, assuming your opponent might have destroyed it. When this card is co-linked, it and the cards it's co-linked to gain 500 attack. Also, once per turn, you can special summon from the grave a Link 3 or lower Cyberse monster to the zone this card points to. So that does it for the Codetalker lineup. So the first generic Cyberse Link monster we run is Update Jammer. Update Jammer is really good for helping you push for game. When this card is used as link material, the monster that used as link material for will be allowed to make a second attack during this battle phase. He also has an effect that will allow you to negate all other effects on the field when a Cyberse monster battles. This makes it, though, so that the Cyberse monster battling has to use its original attack and defense. If your opponent's monster is destroyed by battle in that battle, then your opponent will also take 1,000 points of damage. So, again, this can be a generically useful card in the sense that it can make it so your opponent takes a lot of damage, and it's a generic link too that can also give you double attack with whatever you link it off for. The next generic Cyberse card that we run is 1 copy of Trigate Wizard. Trigate Wizard gains effects based on how many monsters it's co-linked with. If it's co-linked to 1 monster, any battle damage that monster inflicts to your opponent is doubled. If it's co-linked to 2 monsters, you can target a card on the field and banish it. And if it's co-linked to 3 monsters, you gain a negation that will then banish the card that you've negated the effect of. Now for some sort of less generic link monsters. The first is Clock Spark Toy. And the reason I say this is less generic is because this is to support the fusion monster that goes with this archetype. What Clock Spark Toy does is if it is link summoned, you can add a Signet Fusion from the deck to the hand. Its other effect is if a monster is special summoned to the zones, either of the zones it points to, then it will special summon a level 4 or lower monster from the grave. However, this will lock you into fusion summoning for the rest of the turn. The only card you're going to ever be fusion summoning off of this, though, is Cyberse Clock Dragon. This is a big beat stick, beefy monster. What happens is when this card is fusion summoned, it requires 2 cards. It requires Clock Wyvern and 1 or more link monsters. So when this card is fusion summoned, you send the top cards from your deck equal to the link ratings of all the monsters used for it as material for it. It then gains 1,000 attack for every card sent to the graveyard by this effect. It is also the only thing on the field your opponent can target with battle. If it leaves the field by an opponent's card effect, then you get to add a spell from your deck to the hand. So this can be a really good card for pushing for game. So if your opponent sort of put you in a situation where where a big beat stick will get you there. This is a good card for pushing for game. The only downfall is that the attack boost that it gets is limited to the end of the next turn. So it can sometimes be a bit of a downside, but for the most part, this will be a good beat stick and it should more often than not help you push for game. So, seeing as we run the fusion, why not also run the synchro? This is Cyberus Wicked. Cyberus Wicked's great because when it's on the field, Cyberus monsters it points to can't be destroyed by card effect. And if a card is special summoned to the zone this card points to, it will allow you to search out the Cyberus Tuner Cyberus Synchron from the deck by banishing a Cyberus monster from the grave. The Cyberus Synchro that you're going to be summoning will be Cyberus Quantum Dragon. Cyberus Quantum Dragon is so good. What it does is it becomes the only thing your opponent can target for card effects and battle if you control a Link monster on the field. It also has a battle effect. The first time it battles every turn, at the start of the damage step, you can return the monster it battles to the hand. And if it's your turn, this card can make a second attack that turn. The final card we run in the extra deck is the new big boss monster for the deck, the Link 5 Firewall Dark Fluid Dragon. Now what this card does is when it is Link summoned, for all the different types of Cyberus monsters you have in the grave, it gains a counter. For every counter on it, it gains 2500 attack. That can get to be really big. If you've managed to get both Cyberus Quantum Dragon in the grave and Cyberus Clock Dragon in the grave, this card will have 8000 attack. You can also remove a counter from this card to negate an effect, activation that your opponent might have. Now this is also not a once per turn negate. This can be a really useful card for dealing with problem monsters your opponent might have. And that does it for the extra deck. Now we do have a small side. It's an incomplete side. What I have in my side is one copy of Code Radiator, because as I said, it's a better card for going second than going first. One copy of Defcon Burb, because it's a useful card, but again, much like Code Radiator, it's a better card for going second than first. We also have one Network Trap Hole. When your opponent special summons a monster from the main deck or the graveyard, you just banish it face down. So it's a useful card, but I really don't go into that often. We also run one copy of Link Bound. This is useful for fixing your hand. You can return a Link monster from the field or the graveyard back to the extra deck, draw cards equal to that monster's Link rating, and then put cards from your hand to the bottom of the deck equal to the amount of cards you drew. We also run one copy of Raigeki, one copy of Monster Reborn, and one copy of Dark Ruler No More. Finally, we also run 3 copies of Parallel Port Armor. Parallel Port Armor is a great little protection card. It acts as an equip card to your Link monsters, and what it does, it makes it so your opponent cannot target that Link monster with card effects, and that monster can't be destroyed by battle. If this is in the graveyard, though, you can banish this card and 2 Link monsters to target a Link monster that you control, and allow that Link monster to make a second attack this turn. So it can help you push for game, it can protect your Link monsters on the board. It's quite a useful card. Alright, so we're going to talk about some combos. The first combo is a 1-card combo. It's a nice little play. It lets you net your Cynet codec really quickly, and it also puts a body on board for you, which can be quite good. It's a 1-card play. Obviously, with this deck, you're likely going to be able to extend beyond this. I'll show you some of the extensions that you can do from this. But if you end up getting lucky and drawing into your one of Lady Debug, you can normal summon your Lady Debug. When it's normal summoned, you get a search of a Cyberus monster, so you can search out your Microcoder. You can activate Microcoder from hand, and you can link off Lady Debug and Microcoder. For the link to Codetalker. This will then let you search out a Cynet spell or trap from the deck. Let's say we search out the Cynet codec. We can activate the Cynet codec, and let's assume we have any of our extenders in the deck. Now don't forget, we have so many extenders. For the sake of this, we'll say something like Cyberus Converter. I can now special summon my Cyberus Converter. I can then go link 3, into Trance Codetalker. Trance Codetalker's effect will go off. Cynet Codec's effect will go off. Cynet Codec will let you search out your widget kit, because that's the only Earth Cyberse we run. Trance Codetalker will special summon back your Codetalker. So, in this situation, this has all come from 2 cards, 1 Cyberse Converter, and 1 Lady Debug. These 2 cards have gotten us all the way here. Now we're going to talk about a 1-card fusion play. The 1-card fusion play is actually Clock Wyvern. What you do is you normal summon your Clock Wyvern, you activate his effect to special summon a token, you link him and the token off to your Clock Spartoy. Your Clock Spartoy will let you search out your Cynet Fusion. And then if you have any of your extenders, you can special summon your extender to the zone he points to. Special summon back your Clock Wyvern. And then activate your Cynet Fusion, sending Clock Wyvern, Clock Spartoy to the grave, so that you can fusion summon Cyberse Clock Dragon. Cyberse Clock Dragon will send 2 cards from the top of your deck to the grave, and he'll be 4,500 attack till the end of your opponent's next turn. So, for my final thoughts on this deck, it's susceptible to hand traps, it does a lot of searching, but seeing as most of the monsters you run in this deck are combo extenders, the deck can continue comboing off until you've run out of options, which can be quite a nice little feature that this deck has. It goes into some really powerful monsters in the Codetalkers. While they may not be super OP, they are quite powerful, especially if you can get them co-linked to one another. You know, protection from card effects, you know, co-link power boost, attack boost coupled with multiple attacks, coupled with effect protection. This can be a really useful sort of strategy, and it can do some different stuff. The value right now is also that it can go into its synchro and its fusion plays. It can also go into the first Link 5 we have here. In the future, when we get something like, when we get Access Codetalker, this deck will be even better because we'll have a light Codetalker that we can work with. And if we get Inverted Codetalker, it'll be even more consistent because it'll have a Link 2 that points left and right. Whereas right now it doesn't have that, so it sort of has to go into the Link 3s to build left and right on the board. I think personally, when that happens, I will possibly take out Firewall, Dragon, Dark Fluid, and I will possibly take out the Fusion and the Synchros to make room for those extra cards that I'm going to need in the extra deck. Make it a pure Codetalker deck. For now, though, this is the current build, and I hope you guys take it with you, make it, enjoy it, and I'll see you at the next profile.